I am David Bullion, Chair of the Historic Review Board. It is the function of the board to consider all applications for certificates of appropriateness for properties in the historic district and for landmarks. In considering whether to approve or disapprove of an application for certificate of appropriateness, the Historic Review Board shall be guided by City of Fredericksburg design guidelines and standards and the Historic Preservation Ordinance. If anyone present wishes to speak in favor of or in opposition to any item on today's agenda, please sign up on the persons to be heard sheet. I think it's in the back. It is not necessary to sign up to speak if you are the owner of or representative for a project on the agenda. You will be called on as the case is called. Approval by the board does not take the place of any type of permit. Permits must be obtained for all work. No work of any type is to be started without obtaining the appropriate city permits after a certificate of appropriateness has been issued by the Historic Preservation Officer. So public comments. Shelby, did we have anyone sign up? Okay. On public comments, the Historic Review Board welcomes citizen participation and comments at all HRB regular meetings. The Historic Review Board offers citizens the opportunity to address them by signing up to speak prior to the meeting and limit the comments to typically 3 minutes. So we'll just go from here. So item number 5, approval of last month's meetings. Does everyone have time to review those? Any comments or corrections? If not, I'll accept the last month's meetings as presented. Moving on, item number 6, certificate of appropriateness applications. We'll start off with the consent agenda. The items under the consent agenda are deemed by the Historic Preservation Officer to be routine in nature and will be approved by one motion of the board adopting the staff's findings and recommendations as part of the approval. The items on a consent agenda will not be discussed. Any member of the board or the public that wishes to discuss an item on the consent agenda may request that it be removed and placed on the individual consideration agenda. Do we have any items to be pulled from the board or the public? So if not, I'll take a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on, individual consideration. Let's start with application number 22. Oh, excuse me. If your application was on the consent agenda, it has just been approved. So you're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting tonight. Other words, you may go. So first application for consideration tonight is application 22-068-405 West Creek Street. Is there a representative? Please come to the podium and introduce yourself and walk us through your project. We might need to hang on just a minute, get that thing turned on. Thank you, Garrett.
My name is George Hager. We're doing the project Hager Construction for my son Henry Johnson at 405 West Creek Street. And we've submitted all the information. We went through one of these a couple of years ago and we added on a carport and went through the committee here. And we're back wanting to do a remodel, a demo. We've gotten the building permit to demo the old building and to rebuild it back. And that and a screen room, not a porch, but it was a freestanding room that was falling down and it was about that tall off the ground. So we, under the demo permit, we've already taken that out. It was basically just 2x4 framing and Tennessee big crimp metal roof and blah, blah, blah. Here's the old building. I guess you all have, yeah. These are the pictures that we took. This is Go back to this.
We're not able to see you on that screen there, what you're pointing to. So maybe if you just describe it. Or
This lower picture on the far right is where there's an old tank house or well house, but it's what we want to take out of this structure and have it freestanding as a focal point. Here you can see the top of the roof,
Mhm.
the whole picture. And that door with the holes in it goes down. Things like an old root cellar, and the platform is up just above as you walk underneath it. I think the platform held the tank. There's a well right outside of that. So at one time, I suspect, that branch land farm there, a well and a storage tank and a root cellar or a storm cellar. So we want to tear it down, but and unveil the old building. You can see on this picture, there's an old stone foundation that wraps around this thing. Of course, somebody's put up plywood and sheetrock all around it, but I believe the rock foundation, you look at the lower picture, the first picture goes to the left and it comes out toward you and back to the left, and it goes out into the open. You can see the lower part of it again on the back of the old siding, car siding. It's actually called something teardrop, I think is what it's called. So this is kind of our project. We just want to redo the building, or we're going to tear it down and build a new building, separate it. It will not adjoin the tank or the little house that holds the tank. And around that, we'll have a courtyard and just kind of feature the tank. That's the oldest item, I think, at the house. I think the house is part of the historical district, but that's probably going to be a jewel to find that, I think. So,
Right. Well, before we take any questions, Anna, you want to walk us through the application
Sure.
and staff's comments?
At 405 West Creek, it's an R1 zoned property and it has a medium rating. The applicant is requesting a certificate of appropriateness for the following. Number one, demo the existing non-historic shed, workshop, and outbuilding. Number two, build a new multi-use ADU on the same foundation as existing non-historic building. Materials to match the main house, including the siding and metal roof, color to match the main house as well. Item three, build a new freestanding covered porch on an existing concrete slab. And number four, rehab the historic tank house.
the old building is covered with the old masonite siding, I guess probably from the 70s, sometime in that period. And the old tank house on the street side of it, what would be the north side, is also covered with that old siding. So we want to be very careful about demoing the tank. We want to kind of like see what's there, you know. So we think it's a good thing. We would like to say, like I say, make it a focal point in the backyard.
Go ahead, Jim.
So staff's recommendation is to approve the demolition of the non-historic series of additions to the historic tank house. The materials and style of the new structure are in keeping with the design guidelines, and the size of the proposed new auxiliary structure is less than 50% of the main house per the design guidelines, and the footprint of the new ADU is less than the footprint of the main house per the design guidelines. And while the location of the new ADU is directly behind the main house, it will be sufficiently separated from the main house and will now have space between the tank house and the ADU. Staff has met with the applicant regarding the tank house. Some original siding is visible and should be retained, and new siding will match, not the stone as seen in the drawings. Staff will conduct an on-site meeting as selective demolition around the tank house begins to determine what original material is intact. The applicant has agreed to use a flat roof on the tank house and a metal tank based on staff recommendation.
Thank you. Okay, board, questions for the applicant?
I have a question, but I think it's directed towards staff. And in that block or on that street, is it common to find a two-story accessory building?
Not immediately surrounding it, but given the depth of this lot, it's a really deep lot, and the placement of the two-story section in the back, it didn't seem concerning.
Other questions, comments?
I have one more question,
Go,
Mr. Chairman,
please do.
to the applicant. Mr. Hager, you say that the screen porch, that was a
Screen room, it was just a
screen room.
room.
It was just and you said it was corrugated metal?
Well, it wasn't screen, it was just corrugated metal
I see.
and 4x4 posts, 6x6 posts, 2x4 framing.
And the foundation exists?
It exists, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions or perhaps a motion?
The application said you were going back on the existing foundation, is that correct?
Well, part of that old building is dirt, but it has a curb, and we're gonna have to,
Yeah,
we're
you
gonna
gotta
have to
do
doctor it
that.
up.
Yeah,
But yeah, it's the exact footprint.
okay, all right.
In fact, the footprint's about a foot narrower than what the plan shows, if you're going from wall to wall.
All right, I just wanted to make sure we weren't superseding city code and saying you could go on the old foundation.
No, that foundation's gonna have to have some work, but,
Yes, sir.
it's just work,
I'll make a motion to approve as recommended with staff recommendations.
We got a motion and a second. Any further discussions or questions, Mr. Hager? If not, those in favor of approving application 22-06, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You bet. Moving on, individual consideration item D, application 22-072, 115 East Main. Is there a representative, Mr. Frisbee? Please join us. That's on page 61 of our booklet.
Do y'all have pictures of that?
Yes, we do, but please introduce yourself and.
Hello, my name is Alan Frisbee. My mom was Valerie Dersh Boone. She owned this building. She passed away about a year and a half ago. It's fallen into my brother and I as an LLC. If you'll notice, there's 3 posts there that are rotten and they need to be replaced. I have not been able to find any more timbers like that or columns like that. Those aren't the original columns. Those were torn down out of a barn in East Texas, and my dad installed those back in the late 70s. I would like to come back in with a picture of the metal and vinyl. You can see they're not identical, but they are artistic, and I think they look good and they're comparable. They're the same dimensions, and they wouldn't require any maintenance. So that's what I'd like to do.
Okay. Anna, you want to walk us through the application and your comment?
Okay. At 115 East Main in the Central Business District, it is a high-rated property, and the applicant is requesting to replace the existing non-original columns with vinyl posts of similar dimensions. And I've cited these sections from the design guidelines on storefronts, including alterations and restoration. And staff's findings and recommendation: the current posts were installed circa 1978, replacing simple round metal columns per a 1947 photo of Schrader's Dry Goods. A canopy on the first floor with metal roof is present in the 1938 and 1946 Sanborn maps. It's unclear if it originally had posts or was just anchored to the wall. Per the design guidelines, vinyl is not an allowed replacement material for storefronts. Since historic photos of the original design are not available, staff recommends the extant posts be replaced in kind, material, and design.
Questions or comments for the applicant from the board?
The existing posts, they're not salvageable at all?
No, ma'am. I've had multiple contractors look at them. Chris Kaiser, Ricky Durst, and they've all said that they're not salvageable.
Okay.
And they have, both of them have looked meticulously to try and find places, and there's just not a lathe big enough around anymore to make those.
Any consideration to go back to the original round metal posts?
I mean, we could, but do you think a dull 2-inch metal post would look better than those artistic posts?
It might be more historically correct based on the photos and the history we have that's documented.
The oldest
Just
photo
asking.
that we have of the building has those small round metal posts, is that right? You have anything older than that? As far as the
No,
photograph?
I don't have any of those photographs. Miss Hudson, I believe, found those photographs.
Was that the oldest we could find?
Yes, and I looked and I had Evelyn Weinheimer, actually, she's the one that sent these over.
I would think that canopy was probably intended to be non-supported because of the tiebacks, and it probably failed as the reason they had the post in there.
Right.
So wouldn't that present a danger if we went back to the original and just had the tiebacks and nothing else?
But if you went back to the original tiebacks, the canopied roof and no post, obviously you'd have to do some structural support. So that's probably why that they put the metal post in there to begin with. I think the comment was more focused around going back to a metal post as the support for the, I believe that's what the comment was. Any other comments or recommendations?
Yes, I actually have a question, Mr. Frisbee. You mentioned Chris Kaiser. Did you think about maybe using like CNC machine and creating that same profile?
That's
Has a
what,
shop.
yeah, my brother actually owns a CNC machine company, and he didn't think it would be able to do it.
I think your dad was a great guy, but I think he put the post in upside down that are there. So I think anything's going to be an improvement. I'd hate to see it just go to slick metal because that's pretty plain Jane. I think what you've come up with, Alan's probably a good compromise, especially since the old ones are upside down.
Yeah.
I'll have to tell Dad that next time I talk to him.
I just remind the board that if we go outside the guideline, we need to have the reason for the exception. It's pretty clear that in our guidelines, we're not supposed to replace wood or metal with a vinyl product. So if you want to go that route, just please just know what the exception is. So if there is one.
I guess from experience, you're not going to get these posts in one piece anymore. The only way you could do it is make them multiple pieces, and since they're structural, I would be afraid to do that.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. Ricky did find a gentleman, but he'd have to do them in 5 different pieces.
Right.
And that's not structurally sound because that's a.
Right. What about just a chamfered? Like what's most common on the?
My opinion is that'd be a complete departure of the historical records. So my biggest concern is the vinyl material.
Are they textured or smooth?
They're textured. So once you paint it, I mean, you'd never know the difference.
Okay, thank you.
Couldn't find any metal posts, you said? These are.
They're vinyl with the metal center, is that right?
Yes.
Oh.
So they're structural, but they look like.
Yes, sir.
I think the metal option is like Frida's.
Yeah.
Mr. Frisbee, did you investigate any turned looking columns or posts made of metal? Is there such a thing?
I don't know if there even is such a thing. I didn't investigate that.
Okay.
I was just trying to match as close as I could to.
Right. This is the time to throw out ideas for the applicant, since he's done his research and hasn't been able to find anything.
Did you check down at Fulton Antiques to see if they had a 740?
I'd be 5. And no, I did not.
The application says medium. Is this a medium or not?
To hide. I believe it's a high rate structure. Yeah, it's,
I'm just looking at the application. The application. says-
oh, just reading.
Just verify.
I don't know if we have any other choice. I don't know if he has any choice. So 540. Oh,
Mr. Frisbee, were you able to reach out to Allen and Allen Company in San Antonio?
I did, and I didn't hear anything back. And
Have you looked at a fiberglass option?
no, I thought that vinyl with steel would be about the most structurally.
Are the tiebacks there at all? It's hard to see from this photo. Are there any tiebacks in place?
No, they're not.
Anna, there's no other options that you're aware of to have like kind of materials?
I've not scoured the internet or local resources, but
I get catalogs. Roof production, mostly cast iron. And
Cast iron stuff,
and iron pieces, but we always have collards and fencing and stuff like that. I don't know if anything fit what he's doing. I don't know if they're special order or take what you get.
Right.
But I get those pretty.
What would the exception be? Is there anything in the guidelines that we could point to an exception to lack of materials availability or?
Is there even a beam in there carrying that, Alan, or is it just basically the fascia board carrying that from post to post?
I don't know, to be honest.
in this company, American Porch, they didn't have any wooden options?
No, ma'am, not that Ricky Durst could find. That was what he found was the closest.
I mean, you, Richard, any ideas?
Return
I mean, those got to be what?
I'll bark up this tree.
Yeah, those got to be what, 9 foot? What are they?
Probably about that.
9 foot turn
Yeah.
post. It's hard.
We're using polymer on the ones we're doing too. Ty
So-
Cox passed away.
Yeah. We definitely need to give the
Yeah.
applicant some feedback here.
I'll make a motion to approve the fiberglass post as pictured or vinyl, because I think it's a much better option than going back with the steel that we get the historic photo of. It seems to me that just distracts greatly from the building, which would be his fallback, and I don't want to see him fall back to that.
So trying to keep within our guidelines, is there an exception there that we could quote?
The lack of availability.
That's your motion.
Yeah.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you.
Further discussion?
I will do some research on this. I actually think I have access to some. If you're open to a different solution, like so.
Yeah, if you can come up with something, I'd just like to do it as soon as possible because those, I mean, they're extremely rotten. They've had 2x6s holding them up the whole time my mom was sick. So,
Yeah, it's just just offering it. You're getting approved.
okay. Okay.
You know, Shelby, could you read back the motion just so we're clear?
Mr. Laughlin made a motion to approve, citing an exception of a lack of availability, seconded by Ms. Amy Slaughter.
Everyone's clear. No, there is no further discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
You bet. Moving on to our last applicant of the evening, application 22-075 324 East Main. Miss Eckert, would you please join us at the podium? Introduce yourself and tell us what you'd like to do.
Hi there, I'm Mary Eckert, and I submitted one application. I didn't see what Anna, she was not going to suggest or recommend what I was wanting to do, so we went back and changed a few things. I'm not sure what she submitted now. I couldn't find it in your email. If you changed it to where we're not changing out the posts now, we're just leaving them. And so we're going to leave them the way they are. I'm just going to, there's one that's pretty rotten. I'm going to see what we can do to patch it up. I think it has, not for sure, these posts were done back almost the same time frame as Mr. Frisbee's in the 70s. I'm thinking there might be a metal post in there that's actually holding it in place, even though they look rotten at the bottom. So, because they feel, I mean, I can ship them, but they don't feel like they're coming out. And so we're going to putty them up and just fix them because I wanted to do metal post and I didn't think y'all were going to approve it. So we're just going to leave them the way they are. I know I'm pretty sure there's no proof, no photos of the property back. I'm sure originally there was probably no canopy on this building and it was probably added in who knows when, 60s, 70s. So all I'm wanting to get approved today is replacing our tin roof with galvanized standing seam tin. And I also want to remove the tin that's on the sides of the canopy, which has I didn't know if she'd put this in the application. I do want to replace it. It has gingerbread. And the photos don't show it that well unless you look at it in person. You can see a little bit, but the tin is very thin. I don't know the gauge of it, but it's all tattered. The little things are flopping and the gingerbread parts are dent. I think it went through a bad hailstorm. I don't know when, but it's pretty beat up and it doesn't look very good. And it's not part of the original building either. I'm thinking Mr. Knopf, who we bought the building from, is probably the one who added this gingerbread tin back in the 70s, maybe even 80s. That we don't have, that photo's, okay, that photo I think is from, do we know how old this photo is? 78, 77?
It's from the RTHL nomination dated 1983.
Okay, so I think he added it in the early 80s. I don't know for sure. So it's not original either. When I replaced that tin anyways with flat, straight tin and black instead of the red, because it's going to be too hard to buy red tin, which I just painted that red not too long ago, which was approved how many years ago. It's too hard to get your reds to match. If I bought red tin, it's not going to go to all of our red signs, and it's tough, and with our logos and all that. So just going to keep it black, and I think it'll look better with a lot of the buildings around us and down Main instead of the bright red. I think it'll be cleaner look anyways, and then we just want to paint. So just replace the tin roof, replace the tin on the side without gingerbread, and tin would be black on the sides. The top roof is going to be your normal galvanized color, and then want to paint the post. Going to putty them up and just paint them a little white, lighter cream, like closer to a white, but not quite white, an eggshell white. And then paint the underneath of the roof, which is also red, underneath the porch. Paint it back white, lighten it up, clean it up some.
Anna, you want to walk us through the original application, and then we did get an email this afternoon about the revision, so
Okay.
maybe you could walk us through that.
Yes, application 22075 at 324 East Main Street in the Central Business District. It is a high-rated property and also a recorded Texas Historic Landmark. The original application was to replace the wooden canopy post with a stylized metal post of similar dimensions. Number 2, remove the decorative metal trim. And number 3, replace the canopy with a new roof. So I've cited the canopy and awning section, the storefront section from the design guidelines. So the current posts were installed by the prior owner. A canopy with metal roof is present in the 1938 and 1946 Sanborn maps. It is unclear if it originally had posts or was just anchored to the wall. Per the design guidelines, if the extant design is not original, it may be replaced with period-appropriate details. The proposed decorative metal columns are wider than the metal posts found on Main Street. Staff recommends the current design be retained or a more period-appropriate replacement be identified, and this recommendation is in keeping with the design guidelines.
And then you want to go through the updated? So basically, item 1 would be keeping the existing wooden post, right?
Right. We will be doing the steel ones.
Okay, and then item 2, replacing the existing gingerbread tin with flat sheets of black tin. Number 3, replace the current galvanized tin roof, with galvanized tin, paint underneath the roof and columns, lighter shades. That's about it? Aaron?
Yeah.
Questions, comments from Ms. Hackert?
Did you research any type of reproduction material that could replace the dental work across the bottom?
I did not because it was not original and I didn't feel like it was right to put that there. It's not from the era. I mean, it wasn't part of it. It was added almost in 1980. So I didn't feel like it was a need to do that. I felt like it would have been more plain and not decorative like that.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I also have a question, Mrs. Eckert.
Yes, ma'am.
The roof, is it in good shape still, or?
No, it's not. If you could blow up the picture, you could see how tattered it is as well. It's pretty beat up.
It's just the standing seam profile doesn't seem as appropriate as V-drain that you currently have on the porch. Could you replace with the same profile? That would be more according to guidelines to replace with the same profile.
We could do something very similar, yes. Yeah, I believe so. I believe it's available. That might be a question for Mr. Laughlin. Right, shouldn't be a problem to get a similar galvanized roofing.
That roof appears to be like a V-crimp, galvanized V-crimp,
Okay,
what I can see from here. So I think that's still available.
okay, then I can do that. It is very beat up, though. It does need replacing.
Mary, on item 2, where you're talking about taking the gingerbread off and putting black tin by Mueller,
Mm-hmm.
is there wood underneath there that you're going to try to cover up and just like you would with vinyl siding or something?
It'll be just like this tin's attached. Yes, there's wood frame underneath there, and it would just attach it right to it.
Seems like a patch.
It's gonna look like a patch.
I mean, it seems like it.
That's the way it is right now. It's all they. I don't know how they nailed it to the frame, the wood behind it. Yeah,
It's just flat tin. It's not.
it's
paneled.
flat tin, and it is. Pieces were, I don't know how they put them together or overlapped them, but like right above the east of the canopy facing Nimitz, where it says Insteprovig on the canopy. That's 2 pieces of tin that are put together to make that one piece.
So the intent for the new tin that you would like, is it for decoration or for just to cover the wood to protect?
We're going to protect, give you coverage from the sun and rain coming in. Yes.
Maintenance issue.
Mm-hmm.
So the decorative work that's on the bottom of that sheet metal, is that going to disappear?
Yes, it would be a straight edge. Mm-hmm. I did notice just now today on Mr. Frisbee's building, he also had a lot of gingerbread that the Historical Society allowed him to remove. So that was also from the 70s. So I was thinking, why can't we remove this? Just a point. I mean, he had a lot of gingerbread on his building. It's part of the tin. Yeah, it's all tin. Mm-hmm. It's not attached to the tin sheets. It's all part of the big sheets at the bottom of it.
It appears to be that sheet metal scroll that you see on a lot of the historic old homes on the ridges, ridge caps that have that scroll work on them. And it looks like somebody took it and fastened it to the bottom edge of that sheet metal to, give that some decorative or cosmetic appeal.
Repurposed.
Mhm. Yeah.
It's actually part of the whole sheet. I think the line you're seeing there that looks like they attached it is the end of the wood, and it's just bent. It's the frame is right up where you're seeing that line. That's the frame of the wood, and then the tin falls below it.
Yeah, to reproduce that and hand cut all of that to trace it onto a sheet, it would be very labor intensive. That is for sure.
Mary, you say this was added on in the 80s?
We're not quite positive. Anna couldn't find any, and I can't either, pictures. We didn't find any older pictures with it on there, definitely. So it was either at 70s or 80s that it was added.
Okay. So this picture that's in our packet,
I believe that one is the one Anna said it's in the book from 1983 that it's noted.
And what's staff recommendation in regards to item number 2 specifically?
So the changes, the design guidelines say if the extant storefront is not historic and you want to replace it, it should be compatible with the character of the building. So looking at other existing buildings of the same style and era. So I think removing the filigree is okay. Going back with a metal siding instead of a wood, I'm not so sure. And I agree with Liliana on the roof material.
Flat metal just seems like a patch.
What do you guys like to do? Either more questions for Ms. Hecker or?
Mr. Laughlin, do you have a different material you would suggest? I was trying to keep it in the same material that it was in tin, but. Right. It was 10, so I was trying to keep it 10. The 10 sheets, trying to think of the length, I was looking at those, they're pretty big. So they're not gonna be, we'll get the largest that you can. I can't remember if it was 8, 10 feet wide. So they're gonna be big sheets. It's not gonna be a bunch of pieces patched together.
Have you thought about just using the wood that's underneath or fixing that up? I think I'm in the same boat as them as far as like, if it wasn't originally 10, I'm not sure why we would just go back to 10.
Your question, well, there's not really solid wood underneath. It's a frame that they attach the tin to. So it's not solid wood behind that tin.
Would you be opposed to framing in with wood?
It's going to be a lot more maintenance than on a regular basis. Wood would have to be constantly painted and it's go rotten and I have to replace it again, whereas the tin would last longer.
In reference to this application, I'm just making one comment. As I was driving to the meeting tonight, I was going down Main Street. I usually stay off Main just to get here a little quicker, but I was driving down Main just to kind of look, last minute view of other buildings, in particular to this application and the previous application. There are lots of examples of pressed tin along Main Street. And so I think there's some precedence for having tin materials. I couldn't recall any just flat tin on Main Street, but at least there's some other examples out there.
I guess my biggest concern is this could have been one of the last things that Shiny Chocolate did, which was the old tenor here. It took somebody at Craftsman to cut that out.
But it's not from 1860. It's more modern. It's more modern than the time frame of the building.
But as Joe mentioned, it was probably off another job and it was repurposed because they took it from the ridge of a house. They didn't want to throw it away, so they just gussied up your building. So it's
possible. As done up as it looks, they may have torn it off another building. I don't know. It's pretty beat up. It looked like it was reused, I would say.
Yeah.
You can see there, that's the frame in that picture. Can't see it over there, but you can see it in this one. And that's the tin right above that wood.
Some of that's on Untitled. I think it's all right.
So I would entertain a motion to approve, disapprove, or just more comments for Ms. Ecker.
Mary, so there's no way to save that gingerbread sheet metal?
It is so thin. I'm even thinking as soon as we try to, it is, if you looked at it in person, it looks a lot worse than it does in these pictures. It is really warped and bent and little pieces have been, I don't know if they bent them back down and up and as they got bent through the years, it's thin. You can't, after a piece of metal has been messed up like that. You can't get it flat and looking good again. I don't know how to explain it. I mean, surely, once a tin can's been dented and try to put it back into its original shape, no, I don't believe we can.
So I think that the gingerbread sheet metal gives the building front a character. It, looking at the photos all the way back to 1983, I mean, it shows like it belongs to the building.
Let me make one other comment. This is an RTHL, so that means this is what it looked like when it was designated as a recorded Texas Historic Landmark. And so this Texas Historical Commission will also need to review this since it is an exterior change. So we could punt and see what they say, see if they have any other remarks. But that just occurred to me too. This is exactly what it looked like when it was nominated to the state record.
If we could make a judgment before we send it to THC, and I think that would probably be better as opposed to just wait till see what somebody in Austin says. Be my preference.
So can it be approved possibly, and then it would be sent to them to be approved?
Based on what Anna just said, that's probably the procedure that we'll have to follow now
Okay.
since it was
All right.
it's in the RTHL. So we would make some ruling on it tonight.
Mhm.
Anna, would you be the one that would submit that to THC?
No, the owner would do that, but I can send her in the right direction.
Okay. Anna can point you to that.
Okay.
And then see what they say.
So Mary, on the post, rather than patching them, because they look like they're about to fail, if we approved you going back with the same size posts that are there, would you put new posts in to match?
The posts aren't original either. They're not similar to what most of the posts are on Main. That was my opinion. So I didn't want to invest in putting posts and I don't like them, honestly. I wanted to do something nicer, but I didn't want to do wood, and I knew it didn't sound like you were going to approve metal. To me, metal is the safest thing for most of us on Main Street with several cars already going through several stores. I think it's smart to go metal. So I didn't want to do wood again. So, no. And these posts are very plain looking, but so I didn't want to pay a lot for posts I didn't like, and I didn't feel like were as good stability wise. I mean, I know wood posts would do their job, I would feel that a steel post would be safer for us if a car hit it than a wood post. I mean, everybody knows several buildings on Main posts have been hit and cars gone through the buildings.
As the application points out, we've got lots of examples of metal posts. I think the issue is just the diameter and the scale of the posts that were submitted. So maybe a little smaller diameter probably wouldn't have a problem. Have the right, temperature tolerance to it.
But I mean, going metal, they weren't metal, so I didn't know if you'd approve that. You said you had to. We kind of have a guideline of sticking with what's there. So
unless you have proof that it's.
There's no proof on what was there back in the time is the problem.
There probably were no posts there originally.
That's what I believe. I think it had a flat front with no canopy.
I guess I just don't want to put this board in a position of approving you patch running post and then it fall.
Well, you can check it. I believe it has metal inside the post. It's pretty sturdy inside.
What do you guys want to do?
Reproduce it? I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question. We'd like to remove all the gingerbread.
Replacing all of it.
Yes, but it's part of the whole 10 sheets.
Yeah.
It's not attached. Mm-hmm.
She is not replacing with gingerbread. It's just, I believe it's just going to be
Straight edge 10 sheets.
So no fenestration.
Say it again.
It's going to be replaced. The gingerbread 10 will be replaced with 10 that has a straight edge with no gingerbread.
Oh. Okay, I'll go back to my original question. Can you figure out some way to put the gingerbread back on it? On the front? Not a straight edge.
No, like we were just discussing earlier, it'd be very expensive to find somebody to reproduce that. We definitely can't reuse this. It's not in good shape. To reattach it, I guess we'd have to cut it off, and then it would definitely look like a patchwork if we just saved the gingerbread part of it. It's super thin tin. I mean, you can just do that and it bends very easily.
What about replacing the tin gingerbread with wooden gingerbread?
There's no proof that this gingerbread was part of the building. I don't understand why we have to, I don't care for it myself, and it wasn't part of the original building, and I don't understand why we have to replace it if it's not part of the historicness, the historical part of the building. This was added most likely around 1980.
This is a question, I guess, for Anna here. When this building was entered into the register of the Texas Historical Commission with a plaque, was it back in 1983 or?
Yes, that's when the nomination was written.
So from the experiences that I've dealt in my career with the Texas Historical Commission, they are very, very tight on changing any exterior of the building once the plaque has been awarded.
And Anna, did you say it was a registered Texas landmark, which is different than just a historic marker on a building? There's certain restrictions on a registered landmark, is that correct?
Correct, it's an RTHL, yes.
Historical Society didn't have any other pictures of this building.
I asked Evelyn at Pioneer, and then I also reached out to the Nimitz, thinking that they may have some Main Street photos that would, since it was so close. Didn't hear back. So, I mean, I searched all of my go-to places and asked Evelyn as well. And she's the one that sent me.
Are there any other examples on Main Street currently that are more in keeping with the original, with the structure of this building and parapet and everything? Is there something that go by to date it?
I mean, I think I could go on a whole philosophy of Main Street. There's very little original, very little. But the canopies and the columns definitely are a very important part of our Main Street. The experience, and you touch it and you see it, and yes, that does have an architectural interest. Is it historically accurate? No, but most of the gingerbread in Fredericksburg is not historically accurate. So the material, if she goes back with a tin was a material that would have been used at that time. wood would have. So I think any combination of those, but it's all speculative at this point, so.
All right, so we know it's from 40 years old. Can we send it to TRC and let them roll on it first and come back to us?
Yes, you guys have 60 days to take action, and they would have 30 by the time she sends it, so.
I've looked. I've looked all over online. There's tons of old pictures of Fredericksburg online, and I mean, I went through them for hours. I couldn't find anything. I really think the town originally had a lot more iron and metal posts, and I think just through the war era, I mean the war time frame, they reclaimed all that for war. Fredericksburg, the history of it shows that the pioneers that moved here, the Germans, that was their expertise, was ironwork. And that's why some of the balconies still have a little bit of around town, the iron. But I think there was a lot more metal in Fredericksburg rather than wood post. And I think it was all reclaimed for the war effort. That's speculation too, but I bet that's probably what happened.
I'm at least some consensus, what we've discussed. I think willing to throw something out there.
If we can't agree or if y'all can't decide anything on the gingerbread tonight, can we at least get the roof replaced, get approved for that, and repainting the post and the porch? Freshen it up.
I'm happy to break up the original application. There were three parts to that. If we can't do them all tonight, then we can at least break them out and do one at a time. Just as a reminder, the first one is the canopy post. Second one is decorative metal trim. And then the item number 3 was the roof. Happy to entertain several motions or one.
Let me try this, Frank. All right, I'll make a motion to approve repairing or replacing the post as structurally needed, to approve the paint color, and to maintain the metal as is on the gingerbread, and to replace the roof with like kind V-drain roofing.
We'll get Shelby to read that back just for clarity before we go.
Sorry, I'm still scribbling.
Okay, that's right.
I have that Mr. Laughlin made a motion to approve painting, maintaining the gingerbread, replacement of posts as needed, replacement of roof with a V-drain pattern.
I'll second that.
So the metal gingerbread stays?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So we got a motion, we have a second.
Either repair them or replace them with like kind material
Like,
structurally required.
Can I ask a question?
Hey, so reread the motion.
yes, sir. Richard made a motion to approve the paint, maintaining of the gingerbread, replacement of posts with like kind material, replacement of the roof with a V-drain, seconded by Jessica.
Just a point of clarity, so in your motion, it says to maintain the current gingerbread, so that's not replacing it with something else, but maintain the current, right? Okay, so now let's open up discussion and you can ask the question.
My only question is, he approved maintenance of the gingerbread, so, and approved painting, so we can paint it black. Red. I think we changed
We have
that, I don't
eggshell in
know,
the
10 years
application.
ago.
So the question was what color, and in the application, you have eggshell white.
No, that was just the underneath porch and the post. And then the new application, the edited application says black galvanized tin for the siding. So didn't know if it was okay to be black.
Were you wanting that to match the roof though? So now if, I think you're proposing two black canopy roof and the metal siding, so it would have been all black.
No, the roof will stay the galvanized tin, just the siding.
Right, but when you were designing it in your head, you picked this dark metal that's up there right now, and then a black on the side. So now if it's gonna be,
It'll still be the color of the roof that you see there. It's galvanized tin, and then the side would be black.
On page 83, the historic photo shows it all a white or off-white color, so I think that would be a different discussion for black.
So your motion does not carry black as the siding, nor does it say replacing. So are you clear on that, right?
I am. I don't know if the motion is. It said I could maintain or do whatever, so I guess that would mean keep it the same.
Further discussion, comments? I'm going to have Shelby read it one more time here at the end before we go, just to make sure that.
Okay.
Okay. Any more discussion before she reads it? Go ahead.
Motion to approve painting of posts, maintaining of gingerbread, replace posts with like-kind material, replacement of roof V. Correct.
I know you said that the red was hard to match. Would you be interested in painting it back to what we know it to be original?
No, not the white. It's very boring. I'm sorry, but the whole purpose of adding color was to draw attention, to add a little life to it and make it more visible. Then it's all white rock and then white siding. It was just very blah. No depth to it. It was green before that.
Any other questions for me? Call for a vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Mr. Laughlin's motion carries. So.
Okay, and so for me, now I have to take it, you're going to send me information on to get it approved through, and then once that gets approved, does it still have to come back to y'all and be approved?
No.
Okay, so once I take it.
The only that's an abnormal step usually, but since you're building with a registered historic landmark, it requires that to keep your plaque that's on the front.
Mm-hmm. Right. Are we forced to keep the plaque? Ask them that too, huh? All right, thank y'all.
Mary, you can always come back and ask for a different color, but this way it's done.
I can come back and do a different color.
You can
The
ask
tin
for a
needs to
color.
be replaced, so I don't know what we're gonna do. It's you ought to go look at it. It's really, really bad. But I'll have to figure
And
out.
on that, from what Richard said on the colors, there are lots of palettes of colors that Anna typically will approve
Yeah.
without coming to the board. So.
And then getting him to work
Otherwise,
with
it's
your
not-
signs, which we're getting that done right now
As long as
too.
it's not like lime green or something, really off from the time frame, Anna's usually pretty good about approving those on the spot. So.
Right. Well,
Thank you.
all right, thanks.
Okay. Any other items for discussion tonight? Motion to adjourn.
I'll second the motion.
All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thanks. Thank you, guys. It's really hard when